this week we're studying the digestive system. It's a little different than the other systems we have studied because each organ has a very different function. The muscular system, skin system, skeletal system, all of those systems had kind of one function for the whole system, not as specific as we're going to see here. So, mechanical digestion. What is our 60-second writing for today? What's the definition of mechanical digestion, and give an example? We talked about this yesterday. Who can answer this? Mechanical digestion. Yes. Okay, so for example, would be chewing. And how is it breaking down the food? Okay, so so chewing or cutting, when you cut up your food, it actually is mechanical digestion. It's breaking the food into smaller pieces, just physically breaking it into smaller pieces. And this, you might remember from 6th grade when you talked about physical change and chemical change. This is a physical change. And by breaking it into smaller pieces, it does a couple things. One is it makes it small enough to swallow, but the other thing, by mashing it up, it allows it to get mixed. It allows more surface area, so your saliva or your stomach enzymes or whatever other things can break it down more efficiently. Yes? Yes, exactly. So in cutting your food, when your stomach kind of churns and mixes it, those are all mechanical digestion. Yes. Okay, and yeah, so cutting your food as it sits on your plate with a fork and knife, that counts too. So chemical digestion, what is chemical digestion and where does it occur? Yes. Good. Good. So it's actually breaking down the molecules into smaller molecules that your body can absorb. And this is a chemical change. Again, in 6th grade, physical change, chemical change. This is a chemical change or a chemical reaction. So it breaks down molecules into smaller molecules to be absorbed. Remember way back in the fall when we talked about how things get in and out of cells. How do things get in and out of cells? Waste and supplies, how do they get in and out of cells? Right, so there's little doorways that carry stuff in and out, or diffusion. So the molecules have to be small in order to get in and out of cells. Okay, so there's a chemical change. Oh, where does chemical digestion happen? In the stomach. Okay, excellent. So for example, in the stomach, you have enzymes and acids. In the mouth, you have saliva. And actually, throughout, like your pancreas produces enzymes, there's many places along the way where chemical digestion happens. We skipped the functions of the digestive system. Do you want to put those down real quick? What are the functions of the digestive system? What's the purpose of the digestive system? Yes. Excellent. So, the purpose of the digestive system is to break down food into usable nutrients, absorb those nutrients into the body, and then the leftover solid waste leaves the body. So, and we talked about this a little bit yesterday, but the kidneys and the urinary system, that's not the digestive system. That's a different system getting waste out of the bloodstream. The waste that comes, the solid waste, the leftover undigested food, that's the digestive system. Okay. Okay, so now, using the picture you have, using this guy, let's go through and define these things. But also, it says part 1 to define on the back. These are some words we came across yesterday in the reading. So let's take a look at these words. And I'm actually going to put in a blank page here so that we can define these. You can define them on a separate sheet of paper too. So let's take a quick look at these words. The words listed include mechanical and chemical digestion. We already did those. So let's look at these words. Enzyme. What is an enzyme? You should have read about it yesterday. Yes. Okay, so it's a special chemical that breaks down a nutrient. And the really interesting thing, it's basically a chemical that helps a chemical reaction happen. It's a substance that makes the chemical reaction happen faster. And the interesting thing about enzymes is specific enzymes break down specific nutrients. So, for example, in your saliva, there is an enzyme called ptyalin, but you don't need to remember that. But there's a particular enzyme that breaks down starches. In your stomach, there is an enzyme called pepsin that breaks down proteins. Your liver and your pancreas also produce different types of enzymes to break down fats and complex carbohydrates and other things like that. So an enzyme causes the chemical digestion. Most people, when they think of chemical digestion, they think of the acid in the stomach, which is definitely chemical digestion. But there's a lot of other digestion, chemical digestion, that happens along the way. Yes? Yes, it's that kind of leaf-looking thing, or it looks like a chewed piece of gum. And it's right along, oh, you're looking at your picture. But yeah, it's right along the first part of the small intestine. So we'll get there in a minute. Okay, and then a sphincter. You were talking about this when we first came in. What is that? Yes. Okay, good. It is, that's exactly right. It's a ring-shaped muscle that acts as a valve, and it mostly controls things going through the system. So yes, of course, the anus is an example of a sphincter. You want to know something really creepy? You know what another example is? Your mouth, right? Muscular ring. Ah, okay. And then also, you also have sphincters at the beginning of your stomach and the end of your stomach, and a couple places along the way, because your food goes into your stomach and it needs to stay there for a while, and then as it gets digested, then it gets squeezed down somewhere else. Okay, so muscular ring. Oh, and you know what? There's one other word we need to have here that I seem to have skipped. We need the word peristalsis. All of these, all the nutrients, that's in section 1. We're not going to spend a lot of time talking about those, but like we talked about yesterday, you guys have learned about those nutrients throughout health classes in elementary school. So you know what those nutrients are. As we go through the digestive system, we're going to talk about where each one is digested or absorbed. Okay, peristalsis. Peristalsis. Who read this yesterday? Peristalsis. Anybody? Yes, what is it? Okay, so it's a smooth muscle action that squeezes the food through the digestive system. And so peristalsis, you can imagine if you put your two hands together like this, And imagine squeezing hand over hand to squeeze something through a tube. That's peristalsis. After you swallow, the peristalsis moves everything through. It's involuntary, right? It's smooth muscle. After you swallow, it moves through the rest of your system all by itself. Okay? Peristalsis. And the textbook has a nice picture of it. It talks about it happening in your esophagus. Peristalsis. All right, we ready to move on and label the guy? So here is, all right, here's the first half of our person. So we're going to go over these parts. So, of course, when you first eat your food, it is under voluntary control. Your jaw, your tongue, that is all skeletal muscle. And what type of digestion happens in the mouth?
And mechanical.
Very good. So mechanical digestion of chewing, chemical digestion, and what nutrient gets digested in the mouth? Not all of them, but which one gets chemically digested in the mouth? Uh-huh. Yeah, we'll talk about the appendix in a couple minutes. Saliva produces enzymes to break down starches. So starches into simple sugars. Okay, so teeth, mouth, easy, right? We already did enzyme. Enzyme in saliva breaks starches to sugars. Okay. Then, I don't know if did your textbook mention the pharynx? It mentions it in the respiratory system, but I think it's worth mentioning here because the pharynx is where the mouth and nose come together. So the respiratory system, which is breathing, and digestive system come together. They have this common area, right? And so what it is, yeah, so in your mouth, well, once you get down to the esophagus, the air goes through your lungs, through your trachea, and the food goes down the esophagus to the stomach. And you don't want to get those two things mixed up, right? Very uncomfortable if something goes down the wrong tube. But the pharynx is why that happens sometimes. So if while you're eating, your little brother or your dog does something ridiculous, and then you go, and your tongue pushes your food over the epiglottis where it's not supposed to go, and it can go either down here or it comes out your nose, right? Yeah, everybody's laughed milk out your nose, right? So the reason why your food can come out your nose is that the pharynx connects these two systems, okay? It's not really supposed to. It's generally pretty uncomfortable when that happens, especially if it's something carbonated. You know, Pepsi out your nose. Okay. All right. All right, so as we just mentioned, the epiglottis, and again, the textbook, I believe, actually talks about the epiglottis with the respiratory system, because the respiratory system, what happens here when you swallow, the epiglottis is a cartilage flap. Cartilage. No, that's different. So a cartilage flap that closes over the trachea when you swallow, so that your food goes down your esophagus, not down your trachea into your lungs. We all have also had the experience where something kind of goes down the wrong tube, and your body fights really hard to cough it back up. It's very uncomfortable. Your lungs can't digest food, so it needs to go down the right tube. Cartilage flap that covers the windpipe when you swallow. Do you guys know trachea, or should I put windpipe?
Wait a minute. What's that little tube thing that goes to your stomach? What's that called?
Okay, we're getting there. All right, next. So then, when the food goes down the correct tube, it goes down the esophagus, and I know my pictures are not on the proper lines. This is the line that would be esophagus here. The esophagus is a muscular tube that connects the mouth to the stomach. Peristalsis in the esophagus moves that chunk of food down. You've chewed up that food already. You know what chewed up food looks like. And it goes down. It doesn't fall down by gravity and go splash. You can eat laying down. You can eat standing on your head. You can eat as an astronaut out in space, and it will still go down because of peristalsis. Okay, then we have the stomach. The stomach is a muscular sac. I think you all know what the stomach looks like. The stomach is a muscular sac. Chemical digestion is going on here, and a little bit of mechanical digestion as it mixes. The chemical digestion, as I mentioned, of course, is because there's acids, but there's also enzymes. And the textbook mentions that it's actually the combination of acids and enzymes together that makes it really efficient at digesting. If it was just acid or just enzymes, it would digest much more slowly. So these two things together make an optimum chemical reaction. Why do the acids not eat through your stomach? Because your stomach's made of protein. Because why? Yes. So your stomach, the cells that line your stomach are constantly producing mucus, and that's a protective layer. There's actually mucus all through your system. It's what helps things smoothly go through your system. And the cells that line your stomach are the cells that go through mitosis the most quickly in your body. They have a pretty short life cycle because they live in a really brutal environment. Exactly. So acids, enzymes, and what nutrients are being broken down in the stomachs? Proteins, complex carbohydrates, sugars continue to be broken down. So most of the stuff gets broken down here in the stomach. Question? Yes. Exactly. So when you throw up, usually it's because you ate something and your stomach recognizes that this is not good. Could have been bad food, could have been bacteria, whatever. So when you throw up, your stomach, which is muscular, contracts, sometimes violently, the food comes up. But yes, the acids and enzymes from your stomach then come up your esophagus and out your mouth. And yeah, they're sour, they're bitter, and it kind of burns because your mouth and your esophagus are not designed to have that kind of acid in them all the time, right? All right. So then, from the stomach, the food's going to go into the small intestine. But as it goes to this very first part of the small intestine, we have some other organs that are going to help out. We're going to have the liver, the gallbladder, and the pancreas. Food does not go through these things, but these things produce enzymes and other substances that help. So you see here, here's the liver, right here. This is the liver. And the liver produces bile. Bile, yeah, when you throw up, like when you've been really sick and you keep throwing up even though there's nothing in your stomach, and there's just kind of that yellow, gross, mucusy, that's got the bile in it. So the liver makes bile. The bile is stored in the gallbladder. And who knows, what nutrient does bile help digest? Bile helps break down fats. Okay? So you can see here, the liver makes the bile gets stored in the gallbladder. And then you see how the gallbladder is attached to this little tube. This tube goes here and attaches to the small intestine. So it squirts it in as needed. So what would happen if you don't have a gallbladder? Well, now, is your liver still going to produce bile? Is it going to be able to store it in the gallbladder? Can it still put it into the small intestine? Yeah. So basically, you're not going to have, you probably would have trouble maybe eating fatty foods to some extent, but your body actually adjusts, so you can live without a gallbladder. but that's what it is, and that's what it does. It's just more efficient that way to have kind of a little reservoir of it and squirt it in as you need it. Then here we have the pancreas. The pancreas also is, yeah, it's kind of leaf-shaped or looks like a piece of chewed gum. What is the pancreas helping us digest? The pancreas produces many different enzymes that help break down proteins, but it also produces a substance called insulin. What does insulin help us regulate? Blood sugar. Blood sugar, right? So as you eat, guys, as you eat sugars, as your blood sugar changes, your pancreas can produce more or less insulin that helps regulate that in the bloodstream. It also produces enzymes. But the pancreas is there, and the same thing, it puts this here. Now, the liver and the pancreas both produce a tremendous amount of things. They help with the digestion. They also help with other things as well. The pancreas, when it's producing the insulin's not going into your digestive system. It's also going into your bloodstream. Yes? Exactly. So people with diabetes, the cells in their pancreas that would normally make the insulin, those cells of the pancreas don't work properly. So then they need to inject insulin directly into their bloodstream to help break down the sugar, to keep their blood sugar more level. Okay, does everybody have all of these organs? All of that, I believe, is section 2 in the textbook. Now we're going to do section 3. So your food is all broken down. It's in your stomach. It's hanging out. Ready to move on. That's what we just did. Uh-oh. There it is. Okay. Here we go. Here is the second half of our fabulous digestive system. So, the small intestine, here you can see, here is the pancreas and the liver. Your small intestine kind of winds around. It's dotted because it's behind there. Look how long it is. How long is your small intestine?
7 meters.
I think it's 9 meters. So, well, let's figure out if it's 7 or 9. It is, so the small intestine is actually longer than the large intestine. Why is it called the small intestine then?
It's like a centimeter, 2, 3
Yeah.
centimeters.
Yeah, it's only about an inch wide. Perfect. So approximately 2.5 centimeters or 1 inch in diameter, and the whole inside is covered with these little things called villi. Now, imagine a nice thick towel with all those little things on it, right? All those little nubby things on it. Those are like the villi on the inside of your small intestine. So the inside of your small intestine has all these little things like this that greatly increase the surface area for absorbing things. So this surface area is way better than this surface area. And tomorrow or Thursday, whichever day you're here, I have some different examples, hands-on examples, so we can look at surface area, we can look at the length of the digestive system, and a bunch of things like that. Okay, so the small intestine, what happens in the small intestine? What happens? What type of digestion? Yes. So the small intestine, a lot of the digestion is happening here, and this is where it is going into the bloodstream. So all of those nutrients are going into the bloodstream. You've got that odd-looking chunk of food that's just going on through the system here, just moving on down the system like this, right? And as it moves through, it continues to digest, but it also is getting absorbed through the villi, which greatly increase the surface area. Okay? Obviously, there's a lot of blood vessels in here too. So increasing the surface area. So then, where the small intestine meets with the large intestine, we have something called the appendix. Now, a lot of you know you can live without your appendix, so why the heck is it there? An appendix just means something on the end. So it's right here. And the appendix, um, it seems to have some function in terms of filtering. There's a Tim and Moby on the appendix, which we will watch tomorrow or the next day. Filters and breaks down toxins. And it appears that probably back before, kind of evolutionarily, before humans cooked a lot of their foods, when humans ate a lot more raw meat, the appendix was much more important. But since we cook our foods and we have a relatively clean environment in terms of water and food and bacteria, the appendix is not really necessary. And then if you get appendicitis, so infection or inflammation of the appendix, this gets swollen and apparently very, very sore. And the really dangerous thing is if it ruptures, think about what's happening right here. What's the food look like?
It looks like brown goop.
Yeah, it looks like brown goop, and as it goes into the large intestine, it's basically transforming from food into poop. So if this explodes into your abdomen, lots of bacteria and mostly digested food. And so if that ruptures, then you're at big risk for infection that would be all over and difficult to control. Well, your body would start fighting it, but it's very, right, you don't want all that inside. So that's why it's dangerous. So let's move up to the large intestine. The large intestine is, of course, shorter, but wider. It is also called the colon. Specifically, the last part of it's called the colon. Large intestine. There's two main things that happen in the large intestine. The most important function of the large intestine is the absorption of water. And the absorption of water ends up creating solid waste that you will get rid of. And in addition, in the large intestine, we also have the absorption of some minerals and vitamins. So water, vitamins, and minerals. Now, if you want to know just what an excellent job your large intestine is usually doing, what happens if, I don't know, bacterial, flu, virus, and your large intestine's not absorbing the water? What happens? Yeah, diarrhea, right? So, and what happens, especially in little kids, they can become very, very dehydrated because they literally can't drink water fast enough because it's not being absorbed. And so in extreme cases, little kids would have to go to the hospital and get like an IV of water so they don't die of dehydration. Most of us, older, bigger, better immune systems and can handle that. So that's what's happening as as this is moving through here, right? And then down, and then everything's all absorbed up, and it comes to this part right here, which is called the rectum. Well, no, this little part right here, this last kind of vertical part. And here's one of those places where the nervous system is helping us out. When the waste reaches here, your nervous system, there's like little receptors that say, aha, I think I need to borrow the bathroom pass, right? And then, of course, we have voluntary. There's actually two sphincters there. One's involuntary, but then the anus is voluntary. And so the waste gets there for you to get rid of. Another thing, in the large intestine, there's a lot of bacteria. There's actually E. coli bacteria in the large intestine, and that bacteria helps us break down nutrients. So let's see, we can say in the colon, there's also bacteria that is helpful for digestion, breaks down things like cellulose. And when you talk about nutrients and things you should eat, you need to eat fiber, right? Fiber is not digestible. Fiber is cellulose, it's cell walls. So when you eat lots of fruits and vegetables, you eat fiber, and what that does is it moves the stuff through your system. And it moves it through so it doesn't stay there for a long time. Think about what this is. This is nasty digested food right? It's the stuff you can't use anymore. So if you don't eat fiber, it might sit there for days and days and days before it gets pushed out. Eating lots of fiber, oatmeal, fruits, vegetables, pushes it through faster, which is healthier. Okay, I believe. Do you have any questions on our digestive system? Tomorrow or Thursday, whichever day you're here, you're going to do some other worksheets to practice this information. We shall now watch Tim and Moby, and while I'm on the flip lesson, remind you that the Tim and Moby on the digestive system reviews all of this. The Tim and Moby on the appendix, also useful. And this will be on your quiz next Friday.